I'd love for more people to see your work because I think it's so incredibly powerful. I mean, it's enlightened my life in more ways than I can really explain. But some people would see that they hear hierarchy, they hear structure, and they hear medieval as well in a kind of pejorative sense, and they just go, "Wow, alarm bells."
Yeah.
You also speak a lot about love, and I wondered if you could just maybe just answer kind of hypothetical critique here.
Yeah. Well, so I think that you hit on the right nail. That is, when you think of hierarchy, we often think of simply hierarchies of power or hierarchies of authority, and we tend to think of hierarchies as being exclusive, as something to exclude others or to exclude things. And there are two things to say about that. One is that, in fact, hierarchy is also it is to some extent exclusive. To some extent, right? It's like if there's a let's say a hierarchy of what makes a good drinking glass, then a whistle is not part of that hierarchy. It excludes whistles from the hierarchy of drinking glasses, right? So obviously it necessarily excludes to a certain extent. And what I think is that in some ways what Christianity brought is a solution to the problem of hierarchies, that we need them. They're inevitable. We need order, and we need a kind of way to understand value and to understand that which is value and valuable and that which isn't. It's like I know what a good steak tastes like, and I know what a bad steak tastes like, and that's a hierarchy. And you just can't avoid the hierarchies. So what Christianity seems to bring is that in the cross and in the crucifixion and in the sacrifice of Christ, that mythologically, let's say, resets hierarchy in a different way, where the idea is that which is the highest is also there to give itself in love to that which is the lowest. So it's not that hierarchy ceases to exist, but that the relationship of hierarchy is transformed, at least in the possibility. It doesn't mean there won't be abuses of power. There'll always be abuses of power, but now there are abuses of power, right? Let's say a Roman hierarchy where the paterfamilias could do anything he wanted to anybody in his house, and there was no recourse against them, and that it was expected that they did that. That wasn't considered an abuse of power in that time. When the Vikings come down and chop everybody's heads, there's no moral problem of doing that, right? So what happens in the Christian story is that at least now, when that happens, we consider it an aberration. We have an implicit sense that those that are above should care for those that are below. That they should act in their roles of authority in love towards those that are part of their body. And in some ways, what I think is that it reveals in some ways the best version of how reality actually works. That it's not like something that's tacked on to how reality works, but it actually reveals that those systems that would have been the most successful in the past, even before Christianity, would have had some elements of that. It would have had something that pointed to the idea that for any kind of system to hold, there has to be self-sacrifice in the system, or else that system won't be tenable in the long term. So like I said, I think that in some ways Christianity revealed something which was already there implicitly to some extent in every culture, but that now it's like it appears to us like, yeah, that's the solution. Like if the king doesn't love his subjects, then that king will not hold. Like that won't work. If a father doesn't love his family, then that won't hold. And that God Himself gives us the image of that, in the incarnation, and everything that comes after that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Everything has a little hierarchy. It's like a little temple, right? Everything has a place in it. Everything that exists has a place in it where heaven and earth meet, right? Where the divine logos, the ultimate identity reason for that thing, whatever it is, and the potential that constitutes it meet, clink, right? It's a little point. It's a seed. Often it's represented in the parables or in the different stories as a seed. The mustard seed, for example, that Christ talks about. It's little, it's smallest. It doesn't actually have forms. Like, and so that's like the Holy of Holies in the temple. It's the place where heaven and earth meet, and then you could say that it's like the reality unfolds out of that. So you can imagine there's an indefinite amount of these points. Like the logos is that where it connects. So that's how it works. And then ultimately what St. Maximus says, and this is crazy if you think about it, St. Maximus says that place contains the logos of that thing, okay? But the logos of that thing, ultimately, it's just the logos. Like, it's just one. And so it's like, that's a crazy thing, right? It's like saying, hidden behind all things is ultimately God, because it's just God appearing in different instances, So it's not that the thing is God, but that's what moves it, right? Like you talk about, it's not just that it's moving in all things, but it's that which moves all things, right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
So that might sound obscure to people, but you really just have to think about it in terms of like about your experience, which is that unless you're capable of paying attention to something, it doesn't completely have existence. Your capacity for attention, and you're not the source of reality, but it participates in the manner in which reality unfolds. And so, hopefully that's understandable. It's hard to explain this, but it's, in some ways, I think, like you said, it's the key to helping people re-understand what is it that we're talking about. Yeah. What are we talking about when we talk about the logos? You deal with it in your video, but this isn't just an arbitrary thing. It's not just something that exists. It's actually helping you understand how reality is constituted, and how God is present in the world. People think, ask even like a regular, like kind of Western Christian, like, is God present in the world? And they say yes, but it's like they're not going into that. They're not understanding. Well, what are you talking? What does that mean? That God is present in the world, right? He's just like this. He's present, like like air is present, like just kind of just there, or is he the motor? Like, is God the underlying reason ultimately for all things? That's different. But once you kind of understand what we're talking about when we say that, then it is the missing link. It reanimates and it makes everything possibly magical again if we're capable of having that attention.